Every year, American households spend over $9 billion on pesticides. Not farms, not corporations, households. People with backyards and raised beds and pots on a porch. $9 billion year after year on sprays and powders. And this is the part they don't advertise. Pest populations develop resistance. You spray, they adapt. You spray more, they come back stronger. And the industry that sells you the spray already knows this is going to happen. That's not a conspiracy. It's just how the business model works. Meanwhile, about 350,000 Amish farmers across the United States grow food on some of the most productive small plots in North America, without pesticides, without a subscription to anything, without a problem. And the core of how they do it, the thing that sits at the center of their entire approach, is something you can build this weekend with a stick, some string, and a handful of seeds. I'm going to walk you through the whole system today. The science behind why it works is genuinely surprising. It rewrites the way you think about insects entirely. And at the end, I'm going to give you a zero-cost technique, something the Amish use every single season, that takes 4 minutes and solves one of the most common garden problems people complain about. Stay through to the end. That one's worth it. The global pesticide market was valued at approximately $84 billion in 2023. It is projected to keep growing every year. Here's why that number should bother you. The pesticides sold for home garden use are almost universally broad spectrum. That means they don't just kill the caterpillar eating your tomato. They kill the parasitic wasp that was already hunting that caterpillar. They kill the ground beetle that eats fungus gnats. They kill the beneficial soil organisms that feed your plant's root system. And once those natural checks are gone, the pest population rebounds faster than it was suppressed because the prey came back and the predators didn't. Entomologists call this pest resurgence. It's been documented since the 1950s. It is not new information, but the product that caused the resurgence will be on the shelf, right next to a slightly stronger version, waiting for you next season. This is not cynicism. This is just what happens when the incentive is to sell more spray. So what did the Amish figure out that broke this cycle entirely? They went upstream. Instead of asking, how do I kill this pest, they asked something more fundamental. Why is this pest here in the first place? The answer to that question changes everything.
Here is the most important thing you will hear in this video. Insects are not random. They are, in a very precise biological sense, selective. And what they are selecting for is weakness. In the 1970s, researcher Dr. Francis Chabousseau developed a framework called trophobiosis, which in plain language means that pests and diseases preferentially attack plants that have an excess of simple, unbound molecules in their tissue, things like free amino acids and simple sugars, plants that are, biochemically speaking, easy to digest. A nutritionally complete plant, one with a full mineral profile and properly constructed proteins, is genuinely harder for most insects to process. Their digestive systems are not equipped to break down complex, fully formed plant proteins, so they move on. Think of it this way. If you leave a stale, half-eaten pastry on your counter and a fresh, sealed piece of fruit next to it, every fly in the room goes for the pastry. Not because flies are dumb, because the pastry is easier. Pests follow the path of least digestive resistance. This isn't fringe theory. A 2020 paper published in Frontiers in Plant Science reinforced the connection between plant nutritional status and pest susceptibility, noting that nitrogen imbalances, specifically excess free nitrogen from synthetic fertilizers, directly correlate with increased aphid and whitefly pressure. There's also something called systemic acquired resistance, or SAR. When a plant is genuinely healthy and has been exposed to a minor stress, it activates an immune cascade. It produces salicylic acid, it thickens its cell walls, it signals chemical defenses throughout its tissue. Researchers at Cornell University's Plant Pathology Department have studied SAR extensively. A plant with active SAR is not passive. It is, in measurable chemical terms, fighting back. And here's the other piece, Brix levels. Brix is a measure of dissolved solids in plant sap, essentially a proxy for how nutritionally dense a plant is. Studies in agricultural science have shown that plants with high Brix readings are significantly less attractive to pests. Some agronomists argue that insects can literally detect the difference in plant sap quality through contact chemoreception. They taste the leaf and leave. A truly healthy plant grown in truly healthy soil is almost invisible to most pests. The Amish didn't read these studies. They observed this across generations of growing, and they built a system around it. The stick method explained. The stick is not a metaphor. It's a physical stake, typically a wooden post, often hand-cut, that sits at the center of a planting cluster. But what's built around that stake is a 5-layer system that addresses pest pressure at every single level simultaneously. Layer 1. Soil mineralization first. Before anything goes in the ground, the Amish amend. Not with synthetic fertilizer, with compost, wood ash, and rock mineral inputs, things like crushed limestone, green sand, or kelp meal, depending on what the soil test shows. Wood ash is particularly important. It's rich in potassium and calcium, and it raises soil pH gently toward the neutral range where most vegetable crops thrive. Research from Penn State Extension documents that plants growing in properly balanced soil, correct pH, adequate calcium and magnesium, sufficient trace minerals, produce thicker cell walls and more robust defensive chemistry. A typical Amish garden kitchen receives 2 to 4 inches of finished compost worked into the top 8 inches of soil before the season begins. That's not casual. That's a deliberate act of building a foundation, not just feeding the plant, but feeding the microbial network that makes nutrients available to the plant's roots in the first place. This is the direct bridge back to what we just covered. You can't have a high Brix pest-resistant plant without starting here. The soil is not background. The soil is the whole story. Layer 2. The physical stake and airflow. The stake goes in at planting, not after the plant needs support, at planting before the root zone is disturbed. Most gardeners stake reactively. They hammer a post in when the plant starts flopping, and in so doing, they slice through the roots that were quietly doing their job. That single mistake reduces the plant's ability to uptake water and minerals, which drops its Brix level, which makes it more attractive to pests. The stake placed early does something else. It gives the plant a vertical anchor that encourages upright growth and airflow. Airflow is not cosmetic. Humid, stagnant air around plant foliage is the primary condition that enables fungal disease, botrytis, powdery mildew, early blight. Fungi compromise cell wall integrity. Compromised cell walls are the invitation that follows. In Amish gardens, plants are spaced with airflow in mind, not just yield maximization. Tomatoes along a stake are typically pruned to a single leader, one main vertical stem, which dramatically reduces the canopy density that traps moisture. The stake is infrastructure. Everything else is built around it. Layer 3. The companion stack. Around the central stake and its plant, the Amish build what functions as a chemical interference ring. Companion planting is not folklore. It has a documented mechanism. Different plant species release different volatile organic compounds, airborne chemical signals, from their leaves, stems, and roots. When you grow multiple species in close proximity, those compounds mix, and that mixed chemical signal scrambles the olfactory navigation of pest insects. Aphids, cabbage moths, and whiteflies locate their host plants by scent. Put enough competing scents in the air and they literally cannot find what they're looking for. Specific pairings that appear consistently in documented Amish kitchen garden practice. Tomatoes with basil, spaced 12 to 18 inches apart. Basil releases linalool and eugenol, which repel thrips and aphids. Brassicas like cabbage and kale with nasturtiums and dill. Nasturtiums attract and trap aphids, while dill draws parasitic wasps that predate caterpillar larvae. Beans with summer savory. Savory is documented to deter bean beetles. Squash with borage. Borage repels tomato hornworm and squash bug, and its star-shaped flowers draw pollinators that improve fruit set. The spacing matters. Too far, and the chemical cloud doesn't reach. Too close, and you create root competition. 12 to 18 inches between companion plants and the central crop is the functional range for most of these combinations. Layer 4. Trap cropping. At the outer perimeter of the garden, the Amish plant what are called trap crops, plants that are more attractive to pests than the crop you're protecting. The mechanism is simple and ruthless. The pest finds the decoy first, it colonizes there, and because the decoy is on the edge away from the main garden, the pest population is isolated and easy to remove, or simply left for the predatory insects that follow. Blue Hubbard squash is one of the most well-documented trap crops in agricultural extension literature. It pulls squash vine borers and cucumber beetles away from other cucurbits with remarkable efficiency. Mustard greens at the garden border draw flea beetles and aphids. Radishes planted densely at the edge attract root maggots away from carrots and brassica roots. Once planted, these require no daily intervention. The trap crop does its job automatically. You check it periodically on the morning walk, which is the next layer, and address populations if they grow too large. Otherwise, the system manages itself. Layer 5. The morning walk as monitoring system. This is not about slowing down and enjoying the fresh air. This is a documented agricultural practice grounded in population dynamics. Pest populations don't explode overnight. They follow an exponential curve, slow at the start, then suddenly vertical. Catching a problem at 2 insects is categorically different from catching it at 200. At 2, you remove them by hand in 30 seconds. At 200, you have a generation cycle established and eggs in the soil. The Amish morning walk is systematic. It happens before the heat of the day when insects are still sluggish and visible. It checks the trap crop perimeter before the main garden. It looks at the soil line for slug trails. It takes 10 minutes, and it functions as an early warning system that makes every other layer of this method more effective. You are not waiting for a problem. You are observing a system.
What conventional gardening gets wrong. Mistake 1. Monoculture planting. Rows of the same crop, one after another, are essentially a highway sign for pests. A single species, wall-to-wall, amplifies the scent signal that pest insects navigate toward, eliminates the chemical interference that confuses them, and removes the habitat complexity that supports predatory insects. The stick method solves this by design. Diversity is built into every planting cluster. Mistake 2. Synthetic nitrogen overload. High nitrogen synthetic fertilizers push rapid, lush, leafy growth. That growth looks healthy, but as the frontiers in plant science research shows, excess free nitrogen in plant tissue is a direct attractant for aphids and soft-bodied pest insects. The plant is essentially advertising itself. Compost-fed plants grow more slowly with denser, more mineral-complete tissue, and they are far less appetizing. Mistake 3. Watering in the evening. Water sitting on foliage overnight is the condition fungi need. Botrytis, downy mildew, early blight, all of them accelerate in that overnight moisture window. The Amish water at the base of the plant in the morning, so the soil is wet and the foliage is dry before nightfall. Paired with the airflow the stake encourages, this eliminates the primary environmental condition that fungal disease requires. 3 habits, 3 direct invitations, and the stick method quietly addresses every one. Here it is. This is what I told you to stay for. Stinging nettle tea. Stinging nettles, the wild, weedy plant that grows in disturbed soil almost everywhere in North America, are extraordinarily high in silica, iron, potassium, and nitrogen in slow-release organic form. The Amish have used nettle tea as a foliar spray and soil drench for generations. Here's the method. Fill a bucket with fresh nettles. Gloves on, they earn their name. Cover with water. Let it steep for 48 to 72 hours in the sun. Strain it. Dilute the liquid 1 part nettle tea to 10 parts water and apply it to the soil around your plants or mist it lightly on the foliage.
Research published in agricultural journals in Germany and Switzerland has documented that nettle extract applications increase soil microbial activity, boost plant silica uptake, which directly thickens cell walls, and show measurable effects on aphid deterrence in foliar applications. It costs nothing. It takes 4 minutes of actual effort, and it directly supports the plant immune mechanisms we covered earlier, building exactly the kind of mineral-complete plant tissue that pests don't want to eat. There's something that shifts when you stop thinking about your garden as a problem to control and start thinking of it as a system to support. The Amish didn't invent these principles, they just never abandoned them. While the rest of the industry moved toward chemistry, they kept their faith in soil, in diversity, in observation, in time. And what they've ended up with generations later are gardens that genuinely don't need saving because they were built right from the start. 1 season. That's genuinely all it takes to see the difference. Build the soil before you plant. Stake early. Stack companions around the center. Put your trap crops at the edge. Walk the garden in the morning. Brew your nettles. You don't have to do all of it at once. Start with 1 layer, but start. I want to know, which of the 5 layers are you going to try first? Drop it in the comments. I read every one, and I'm curious what your garden situation actually looks like. And if this kind of content is what you're here for, subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from.